The Chosen Season 2, Episode 2 introduces two of my favorite characters, which is Nathaniel and Philip. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on Philip, who is kind of the leader of the apostles in many ways, and instantly kind of jumps into the group, kind of being the most knowledgeable and most prepared for everything kind of going on. So let's go through this episode and talk about Philip's role and how he joins the group. And there's definitely some interesting pieces here. And so let's talk about that. Let's jump in.
Who is that?
Maybe it's a scout from... Where we said Ushia?
Maybe he's just walking.
No one just walks in the Bashan.
No one but us.
Shh, shh, shh. Don't come any closer!
Shalom.
He's Jewish.
You think?
What do you want?
For the Romans to go away? For a pretty wife someday. I ate a fattened goose once. I love that again. You followers of the Rabbi Jesus of Nazareth?
Don't say anything. Could be a spy.
Spying for whom? For what?
There are spies, but they're not smart enough to dress like this. Are you Simon?
I wonder how they came up with this introduction to Philip. Like, it's just so random, but obviously it brings them to a place of like questioning, like, who is this guy? What's his role? Why is he here? It's really interesting to see, but it is so random, no?
Son of Jonah,
Who are you?
you're new at this. I get it. Once you've followed your rabbi for long enough, you won't even blink when a strange man such as myself walks out of the woods with a message he can only give to Jesus directly.
Yeah, we are pretty new.
Doesn't make us dumb.
We can't let you see the rabbi without knowing your business.
I can't say. If you want to send me away, fine. Say hello to my friend Andrew for me, though.
I wonder why they wrote. I mean, it makes sense why they wrote it that way, but at the same time, like, why can't Philip tell them why he's there? Like, why can't he just say, "John sent me to follow Jesus now"? Like, wouldn't they totally understand that? Since a lot of them actually know John or have met John or have seen John, and especially Andrew, clearly being a disciple of John, at least in the show. So why wouldn't he be able to tell them? Is a little bit weird to me, but yeah, just my thoughts there.
What do you think?
I don't know. Bring him in, I guess. Let Jesus figure it out.
Something's not sitting right with Simon.
Andrew has friends.
Phillip! Hey! There he is!
Wow, you smell terrible.
What did you expect, huh?
Come on.
So Andrew and Philip are both disciples of John the Baptist, and so we see that kind of played out in this episode here, and in the future. Obviously, that's a connection that they have as well. Now, seems in here at least that Simon was never associated with John in any way. He probably had met him or seen him before, but was never a follower of his. Andrew clearly wasn't like a true follower of John's either. Like, he didn't go around and actually like join John on his journeys, but Philip definitely did. And so that's the difference there between them.
What are you doing here?
From Bethsaida? You never mentioned a Philip when we were there.
You'll find this shocking, but I have a whole life that doesn't revolve around
What's the
you.
problem? Just asking about this cook.
He's not kook. You know, you could be a little less you all the time.
So let's talk about scripture here. What are they talking about when it comes to Philip here and where he comes from? So in John chapter 1, verse 43, we see the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. So this is interesting the way that they tackle this within the show. Obviously, they mention that Philip is from Bethsaida. However, in the show, Simon doesn't know him, even though they're supposed to be from the same city, right? So generally we see that at least during the time of the scriptures, Peter and Andrew actually live in Capernaum. They don't live in Bethsaida. So maybe at one point they were from Bethsaida and they knew Philip back then, at least in scripture, or something else happened similarly, right? Where they moved from one city to another. In the show, we see that Simon doesn't know Philip at all, but Andrew does, and that is basically through meeting him in Bethsaida and then following John the Baptist with him. But it's interesting how they tackle that here, and at least they do mention that Philip is from Bethsaida and that they were there at some point. Although the show isn't super clear about why they were there, if they lived there, or what else happened there. So
Fair enough.
You take it to him. Make nice.
we'll fast forward a little bit here.
You'll never know when you get to sleep next. Or when you have clean water. Take advantage when you got either one. Thank you.
Sounds like you're in a war out there with John the Baptizer.
People hate, by the way, that they did that Simon always calls him Creepy John. A lot of people are like, that's blasphemous. That's heresy. Everybody would have thought that John was weird and creepy, okay? Like, he's out in the middle of the desert. He's wearing camel skins. He's eating locusts. Like, this is not a normal dude, okay? Far, far, far from normal. And so a lot of people would have thought he was weird. So having Simon have a reaction like this, actually, I think is fine. It makes a lot of sense for me in terms of the first century there.
No. War has rules.
What did you find?
Nothing suitable.
Of course you didn't find any. Where did you look?
To the east, 1 mile.
That's the ravine. Anything you'd find there would be...
Wet. Yes, I discovered that.
But there was wood.
It was wet. That's Matthew. He checks the ravines for wood. Probably fishes in the desert, too.
So you can see here immediately who Philip is, right? Not only is he someone that is a leader, it's someone that's not afraid to enter a new group. We also see that he's compassionate. Immediately he has empathy for Matthew, as Simon is kind of bullying Matthew quite a bit. Now, next we're going to learn that Philip is not only compassionate, but he's also knowledgeable. And so we're going to get into that as well.
Good work, Matthew.
Thank you. Who are you?
Well, I'm the guy who dries wood.
I love this moment here because this is the first time that Simon has really been challenged by anybody. Of course, Matthew's not going to challenge him. A lot of these other guys, Big James and John, are not really going to challenge him on a lot of things. And Simon is going to allow them to do things because he's friends with them, etc. Thomas and Thaddeus and Little James, they're not really going to challenge him. So this is really the first time that we see someone with more leadership skills at the moment than Simon has. And it's really interesting to see that butting of heads a little bit.
Now, if only you had an arsenal of weapons, we could do it in the manner of Ezekiel.
How did Ezekiel dry his wood?
No, it's the prophecy against Gog and Magog.
And then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and make fires of the weapons and burn them. Shields and bucklers,
bows and arrows, clubs and spears, and they will make fires of them for 7 years, so that they will not need to take wood out of the field.
I really like how they did this because it's showing a couple of different things. First off, I think it's showing that Philip is clearly the most knowledgeable out of maybe most of them here, maybe other than Big James, because in the show we see that he is kind of called the one that kind of knows a lot of the scriptures and different things like that. But all of them would have gone through basically primary school. You can think about it that way, right? They would have gone through elementary school as boys and memorized the first 5 books of the Bible and some other portions of other things, right? But as they studied, they would have memorized large portions of the scriptures. that includes what we're talking about here, which is Ezekiel. So Ezekiel 38 and 39 talks about the prophecy against Gog and Magog, but what they're quoting specifically is coming from this section here, where the Lord basically says, then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and make fires of the weapons and burn them, shields and bucklers, bows and arrows, clubs and spears. They will make fires of them for 7 years, so that they will not need to take wood out of the field or cut down any out of the forest. They will make their fires of the weapons. And so that's what we're seeing them quote here as they're going through. But I love the way that they do this, because if we listen, if we go back a little bit, we can see that Philip starts it out. Then Andrew and James and John start to kind of come in a little bit. But one of the last people, if not the last person to join in, is Simon himself, who is probably the least learned person out of anybody here other than Matthew, right, when it comes to those scriptures specifically. And so we see Peter kind of struggling to keep up until the end, and then he finally gets to the end of the section here. But I think that might have been done purposefully, showing the different levels of understanding that these guys had of the scriptures themselves. So it's interesting. Let's watch that again.
In the cities of Israel, will go out and make fires of the weapons and burn them. Shields and bucklers,
bows and arrows, clubs and spears, and they will make fires of them for 7 years, so that they will not need to take wood out of the field or cut down any out of the forest.
And I love that shot there too of Rama and Matthew specifically. This season, they're going to push forward and want to learn more about this kind of things. And so it's interesting that we see Rama and Matthew kind of having that same mission there in that one shot. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see us making more content just like this, then you can help to support us over at snipesupport.com. This is a great place where you can pledge $5, $10, or $25 a month in order to help us to continue to make this level of videos and keep on doing what we do. Oftentimes YouTube is fickle and sometimes it can be scary. Just last week we saw that the Brosen was completely banned from YouTube and then slowly reinstated over the next day or so. This was terrifying for us, because if we get banned or our channel videos get taken down, that means that all the revenue from those videos and everything else is completely shut off for that period of time. And that could be a day or a week or a month, or in some cases I've seen on YouTube, years. And that's terrifying. So we want to be able to diversify and have you guys support our content in other places. Patreon is the best for this. So we'd love for you to go over there at snipesupport.com and sign up if you can. If not, no worries. But over on Patreon, you'll find extra content as well as our full live streams, which are often 3 hours weekly that we post only on Patreon. So anyway, let's get back to the video, but I wanted to thank you for your support and for even watching this video in the first place. Anyway, let's get back to it. This next scene, we see a little bit more of his compassion, and also we get a little bit of background on Matthew as we kind of go into this scene here.
Simon.
He doesn't like me. He sees me as his enemy.
Why?
As a tax collector.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's everyone's enemy. That doesn't shock you.
I was something else once too. Once you've met the Messiah, is all that matters.
This is an interesting line. Obviously, it's true. Once you've met the Messiah, is all that matters, meaning that he will change who you are and your identity will be focused on him, which, of course, is the opposite of what we see with Nathaniel. If you want to see an episode about Nathaniel, we just did that, so check back on the channel and see over there. But it's interesting because at this point, Philip, I guess he's not met Jesus, but he's seen Jesus. So maybe he's counting that, I guess. The only time that he would have seen Jesus before this is whenever John was baptizing him in the Jordan. And so that's the only other time that we know that he would have had an interaction with Jesus in any way. So yeah, maybe that's what he's talking about there. I guess that makes sense.
Next time he rides you, remind him that the people out there, they want to define us by our past, our sins.
Out there, where?
With the sleepers. But we're different. We're awake.
I don't understand.
Well, you haven't felt any relief except with him, have you? Your rabbi?
No.
Don't expect to.
How did you memorize prophecy?
In Hebrew school, like all Jewish boys, didn't you?
I started, but then I skipped ahead.
Skipped ahead? Never heard of anyone skipping ahead. What did they do that for?
I was sent to apprentice under a bookkeeper.
Were you that good with numbers or that bad with Torah?
I was proficient in both.
No, I'm kidding. How old when you skipped ahead?
8.
8?
I showed unusual promise.
I bet you did.
So this gives us a little bit more of a timeline for what Matthew has been going through in his life. We see that when he was 8 years old, he skipped ahead in this bookkeeping apprenticeship, right? And so he was no longer doing either the two things that Jewish boys would normally do. So normally you would either continue on with your Torah classes, right? Or your Beit Midrash and different things like that. Or you would stop doing your Jewish Hebrew school, essentially, and you would go to do your family's trade, which we know that Matthew didn't do, right? So this is somewhere in between. I'm not sure how likely this is or how common this would have been during the time of Jesus, because generally you're either continuing on with your religious studies or you're going to do the family business, and that's generally how it kind of worked. So I don't know how common this would have been, but we do see here that when he was 8 years old, he got put into an apprenticeship, and then from there he was chosen by the Romans to essentially try out to become a tax collector, although that would have been Matthew's decision from the very beginning.
How come you never circled back to Torah?
I was paraded before the magistrate. Rome offered me higher wages than the annual income of my father and 3 of his brothers combined. Bought my first house when I was 13.
Why did you need to buy a house?
My father
Kicked you out.
Yep. So by the time he was 13, he was already a tax collector and working on his own and living on his own. So probably around 12 or 13 is when that transition happened for him, when he was declared a man, right? And he started becoming a tax collector for the town. But again, this is Matthew's decision overall. This is actually an interesting note. I think this is probably a glitch in the Matrix for The Chosen, because we actually get a scene later on for Matthew that shows him definitely not 12 or 13 whenever his father first disowns him. I guess there could be different times there when his dad kicks him out versus when his dad disowns him. These could be 2 different times, I guess. It's not super clarified in the show. So yeah, maybe that's it.
I don't blame him.
I thought you said...
He's a man.
So someone is asking in chat real fast about the sleepers line. So there's a lot of stuff in scripture where we talk about being asleep versus being awake, right? And this is a easy way of saying this is someone who has knowledge and someone who does not, right? The sleepers are the people that go about life thinking that there is no God, that Jesus never existed, and that these things never happened, right? Those are the sleepers. The people who are awake are the people who understand those things. And so we can live life with a full understanding of how God intended us to live it, right? If we know that Jesus is the Messiah and that he died for our sins and that heaven is real, this will change the way that we live life, because these other things no longer matter, right? It doesn't matter what my profession is or what I do for myself. All that matters is what I do for the kingdom and what I do for God. And so those are the things that define me. Those are where my identity comes from. So that's what he's talking about there with the sleepers. He's pushing forth a new identity to Matthew, saying they are the sleepers, we are the ones that are awake, because we understand who the Messiah is and we have a full knowledge of what is actually happening. So that's kind of what that means there.
He acted by man's standards. Everybody in your old life is playing a different game than you now. You get it?
No.
I love that. So he's saying everyone is playing a different game than you. Do you understand? And he's like, no. And of course, the whole time here, Philip is talking very, how they say later, obtusely. He's talking very metaphorically about a lot of these different things. So whether it comes to the sleepers or whether it comes to playing a different game, Matthew doesn't understand these things. Because again, in the show, Matthew is on the spectrum of autism, right? And so he does not understand these metaphors. He just needs something straight. He needs someone to talk to him very simply, right? In a way that he can just clearly get it without using extra language and poetic language, things like that. Doesn't really make sense to him.
Everyone speaks in riddles. I can understand esoteric ideas. They're not beyond me.
Of course not. You'll probably pick it up faster than the rest of us. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to sound like an oracle here. It's a force of habit. Spend all your time with a rogue preacher in the wilderness and you get to be a little obtuse. They're simple ideas for complicated people.
In your obtuse language, here's the circle. It represents everything in the world and all the people that have ever been. And that's me. That's how I feel.
Well said. Good for you. And yes, I've been living literally outside this circle with John the Outcast for a couple of years, so I can relate.
So again, their empathy, he's showing Matthew, I am like you. I don't think like you, I may be different from you, but I am like you in this way, that I've been an outcast as well. I am not someone who is wanted. I am not someone who was the first choice, right? As we see that there. Then finally, we get a scene later on where, I'm going to skip this scene here, although I do like it, with Matthew and Phillip kind of debarking all the wood here, which I think is a great scene. But I am going to skip forward past that to the first time that we see Phillip meeting Jesus.
Shalom.
Shalom.
I'm glad to see you here.
I'm Phillip. Wait, John told you?
No, I remember your face. You were standing with Andrew the day I was baptized by John.
Ah.
How is my old cousin? I shouldn't call him old. We're the same age.
His reputation with Rome is down, but his spirits are up.
So there we see the connection there between Andrew and him and John the Baptist on the day that Jesus was baptized, although we don't get much more information about that. This is one of the scenes that people have always wanted from The Chosen, is Jesus' baptism scene, although I'm not sure that we'll ever get that in the show. We'll have to see.
Sounds about right.
He sends me with a message. Wants me to tell you something on my behalf.
That's good, because I have something to say to you too.
It's a very short message. Only 2 words.
Mine is also short. Follow me.
I will.
So John thinks you're ready.
Yes. He spoke with someone.
Shall we?
John spoke to someone the last time he was in prison.
Someone?
A Pharisee. He had been troubled by a miracle he witnessed in the Red Quarters in Capernaum.
Ah, yes.
So he's talking about Nicodemus there, talking about season 1, where Nicodemus is having these conversations with John. After that, of course, Nicodemus had a conversation with Jesus himself, but John doesn't know that, so he doesn't have the updated information from when he was in prison before.
I know this man.
You know him?
Yes. I might even call him a friend.
John told me to expect anything, to expect nothing, but I think he'd be troubled to know that you were friends with a Pharisee.
I think he absolutely would. John, of course, one of his main missions is to get away from the corrupt Pharisees and what they've been doing, and calling them out on the stuff that they did wrong, right? Calling them a brood of vipers, really letting them know how it is. So much so that he goes to Herod Antipas, right, and tells him that he can't be sleeping with his niece slash sister-in-law, right? Just some weird stuff going on in that family. So John, of course, he would have been very worried that Jesus is connecting himself with some Pharisees, but we don't really know that ever really happened during his ministry, other than a few Pharisees that did follow him. Nicodemus being one of them, sort of, but that he would call him a friend, I don't know about that. Would have to see. Maybe.
He'll get over it.
Well, then we received word of what you did in Cana. That was all John needed to hear. He sends his love.
So then he heard about what happened in Cana, which is the miracle of turning water into wine. Remember, during season 1, before that point of the water to wine, he's having this conversation with Nicodemus and saying, oh, he's doing private miracles. The public signs cannot be far past, right? And so John was expecting Jesus to do these other things. And so since he has, that's why he sent Philip to go and follow Jesus here, as now Jesus has started his public ministry.
And you?
Meager offering.
Hardly meager. You will be the most experienced of all my followers.
John is hardly standard procedure.
Even better.
If I may be so bold, what are your intentions here in Bashan?
Just passing through.
To Caesarea Philippi.
Caesarea for one night, and then we'll continue north into Syria.
Syria?
That's right.
I heard you were just in Samaria and now to Syria. You and John are really cut from the same cloth. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you each had a death wish.
I wouldn't.
It's so interesting to me to see Philip. Let me pull this up real fast. I have this thought right here. Here's the Dunning-Kruger effect, okay? So the idea of this is that when you start something and your knowledge is kind of a little bit lower, you have this ignorance that brings you more confidence than you normally would have, right? And so in this area, I think Philip is somewhere like here where he's starting to realize that he does not have all the knowledge that he thinks that he has. While he does have a good amount of knowledge and is probably more prepared than the rest of the apostles, there is a lot of things that need to happen for him to become an expert in the area, right? And so this phenomenon that we see, it's like, imagine you're first starting to play the guitar, right? You start getting a bit of knowledge and you realize, oh, okay, there are some things to this that are pretty easy. I could get them. I'm really, really confident in this. Then you hit bar chords, okay, which if you don't know are some of the hardest chords to play on the guitar, right? Then you start to fall down and you're like, oh no, I cannot play this. I cannot play this. I cannot play this. And then here is where you start to understand bar chords, okay? And you get better and better and better, right? As you go through. So this is where Philip is, I think, somewhere on the map here. He's around here where he has a lot of knowledge. He's realizing he's not, the best of the best of the best. Maybe he doesn't have all that confidence, but he does have a large amount of confidence still. Within season 3, I think that we see him drop to here. And then in season 3 and in season 4, I think we see him starting to rise again throughout that. So I think there's a big moment here later on that he kind of falls, but where he's starting is really confident, and in some ways it's rightfully confident, right? Where he does have more knowledge than the rest of the group, but he doesn't have more knowledge when it comes to Jesus, right? And who Jesus is and his role that he's going to play and what he's actually going to do. I don't think that he has the full picture on that. So it is interesting to see kind of where he starts here in all of it.
I wouldn't exactly call it a wish.
But the what? A death what?
So let's go back there. This is the first time that Jesus talks about his death in the show, but I want to hear this again.
Death wish. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you each had a death wish.
I wouldn't exactly call it a wish.
But the what? A death what?
It's nothing. I'm still thinking through how to talk about it.
I think that's downplaying it a little bit, to say the least. It's nothing. It's probably the most important thing that's ever happened. So here, this is the first time in the show that Jesus talks about his death. to anybody else. And so Philip is the first person to know that Jesus is going to die. But he's saying that he's still thinking about how he wants to talk to the rest of the group about it and how to basically navigate that. He says, because Philip is saying, it sounds like you and John both have a death wish sometimes, right? He's not fully understanding why they do what they do, or some of the times what they do is dangerous, right? And he's saying it's not a wish, because obviously Jesus does not want to go through that in a human sense. He does not want to experience the pain and everything else that happens through that. And so because of that, he's saying, oh, it's not a wish, necessarily, but he does know that it's something that he's going to have to do. So this is the first time that we see him talk about his death, which is a really interesting, looking through it through Philip's eyes, and how he's reacting to Jesus's kind of proclamation of that, even though he doesn't have a full vision of it yet either.
That's why I was gone for a couple of days. A lot on my mind.
Yes, I can imagine. In Syria, will we go to Damascus? Antioch?
Not to the big cities, no. To the smaller places. I'll wake him later. We should get some sleep, Philip. We've got a long road ahead of us tomorrow.
All right, that's pretty much it for Philip here. That's all we're going to go over. After this, he does ask to go to Caesarea Philippi in order to talk to Nathanael and to see how he's doing. Of course, that leads him to having Nathanael be a follower of Jesus as well. We covered all of that in our Nathanael episode, so go over there and check that out. Lots of really interesting scriptural stuff to do with Nathanael over there as well. But let me know what your thoughts are about Philip. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about in terms of the new actor and everything like that. It's not really what we're focused on right now. What do you think about the character of Philip, what his role is, how he's going to grow throughout the next few seasons, what that kind of looks like, and his introduction in season 2 here? I think it's a really, really good one. Next time, of course, we're going to jump into season 2, episode 3, which is an amazing episode and a really unique episode in the whole zeitgeist of The Chosen. It's really unique. So the next 2 episodes, I'm really looking forward to. Don't miss them. And of course, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.